How's it going, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. Is everybody doing well tonight? I know it's been an action-packed day. We're going to have Andrew Bone in just a second to talk about new commitment Roby Utz, and we should have Bone in 3, 2, 1. Andrew Bone is in. Let's let him get his audio set up. Thanks for joining us, fam. Really appreciate you guys being here tonight with us. And how you doing, Andrew? You good? In 2 more seconds. We already got a super chat on here for from Randall Williams. So thank you so much, Randall. We appreciate it. And good scoop today with Randall with Roby Utz jumping on board for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think it was a big pickup. Have some highlights that I want to distribute in just a second. Bone, you good? You ready to go?
Yeah, I was having some mic issues. I don't know what was going on, but I think we're good now.
Well, it's the internet, anything could happen on the internet. And I think I've been around long enough to know that anything can go wrong and it will go wrong on the internet. So glad you're here. And thank you so much, Randall, kicking it off. And he's like, thank you so much for the efforts and your patience answering the same questions again and again. And we're getting those questions about Roby Utz. When is he going to commit? When is he going to be a part of this Alabama team? And then, today after our staff meeting, boom, Roby Utz is in. Go ahead, Bone.
Yeah, it was obviously a great commitment today for Alabama. A guy that they've been recruiting for the last several months. We started talking about Roby Utz back in the spring as a guy to really start watching. Nobody really knew a lot about him. He's a tight end out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Alabama kind of offered him a little later in the spring, but he ended up taking a visit to Tuscaloosa on his own in I think it was it's either early June or late May. I can't remember, but it was during dead period. Couldn't really visit with the coaches. Couldn't go inside the facilities, but he was able to tour the campus. He spent some time with Miller Forrestall, the Alabama tight end, and kind of got comfortable around there. Now, he had a top 2 of Alabama and Virginia Tech. Now, everybody's saying, obviously it's an easy choice, Alabama, over Virginia Tech, but he had visited Virginia Tech 3 or 4 times, and was able to interact with the coaching staff during those visits. He just wasn't able to, have those, communications with Alabama. He was able to speak with them, via phone, via FaceTime, via text, but just not in person. So, that's the only thing that that Alabama lacked. But, as we've seen with Alabama this year, they've been able to land prospects who haven't even visited. J.C. Latham never even visited Alabama. Christian Leary never visited Alabama. Devontae Smith, now he flipped from Ohio State. Now he had visited Alabama before, but not as a recruit. He'd just gone there to attend a game 3 or 4 years ago, and so it's kind of a different year, as we all know, with COVID-19. But great pickup today. Alabama coaches extremely excited to have Roby Utz on board, and everybody's been wondering, when is Alabama going to get a tight end? And they really like Roby Utz, and I know a lot of people look at his profile page and say, well, he's a 5.63 star. Listen, I think the biggest thing about him is, he wasn't able to go out to camps, wasn't able to get seen. You watch his highlight film, very impressive. I mean, he'll go up, he'll get the ball. He's a very physical run blocker. I think Alabama fans are going to really like that aspect of his game, and he can get the job done. So this is definitely somebody that Alabama targeted early on. They really liked from the get-go. And, even though there's, some 4 stars out there that Alabama fans were looking at and thinking, well, why aren't those guys going to Alabama? This guy was rated ahead of a lot of 4 stars on Alabama's recruiting board. So they're extremely excited to have commitment number 21 on board today, their first tight end. And I say first tight end. Now, keep in mind, Caden Clark took a gray shirt, so he's going to arrive in January. So that's basically 2 tight ends in this recruiting class, and Alabama is completely finished at tight end. They're not going to take another tight end. This was going to be the only one. Extremely difficult, especially when you have only about 5 remaining spots in this class. But they got their tight end. They're extremely happy, and let's see who's next.
Bone, I mean, I look at those highlights, and I mean, this poor young man on the opposing team, and these are his junior highlights. I mean, first of all, look at this snag right here. I mean, that was completely insane. And then there's this clip I just want to play one more time because poor young man's helmet just completely pops off. That guy gets depleted. I mean, this guy coming in, I mean, obviously we love our family rivals, but maybe they didn't see these highlights. I mean, this is pretty ridiculous. So really excited to get this young man on board. And, now Alabama up to 21 commitments. I know everybody wants to know tonight who's next. How many can they take? I know we've talked about that number before. You said it's probably going to be a little less than we've predicted in the past, but now up to 21 commitments, still number one in the Rivals.com recruiting rankings. Are you getting a pulse about who could be next or who could be on the verge to make an announcement, I guess, in the month of September?
Yeah, I think in terms of Alabama, who's next? I think that's going to come a little bit later on. I think it's probably going to be maybe November, December before we could potentially see another commitment. I think most of Alabama's key targets that are still out there, and as Kyle mentioned, there's not a lot of spots remaining. Alabama's up to 21 commitments right now. I think there's really only about 5 spots left. I think that might be the max is 5 spots. So a lot of the guys that they're heavily recruiting plan on waiting until a little bit later on. Everybody's kind of waiting around to see if they can take some visits, if they can, take official visits once the dead period is lifted by the NCAA. Now, as we've seen from some, different schools throughout the country, Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU this past weekend, recruits have been gathering on campus, and some have been called recruiting summits, get-togethers, whatever you want to call them. We've seen a bundle of recruits, visit these campuses. Is Alabama going to potentially press for something like that? Now, I don't know if they can necessarily press for something like that because it's a recruiting dead period. I think a commitment or two is going to have to set that up and really press to get Alabama's top guys on campus one weekend so they can see everything, so they can see the campus, be around other commitments, be around other key targets. I don't know if Alabama is going to be able to, have anything like that on campus this year, but I'm sure it's probably been discussed and, something could be in the works, but, nothing at this point right now. So I think everybody's just kind of waiting to see, is the NCAA going to allow official visits this fall? And I also think that with these, recruit gatherings at these different schools over the course of the last month, it may have been a guinea pig, for the NCAA to watch and see, if there are any outbreaks. So, if there's anything, that comes about it with COVID. So hopefully there's not, and hopefully they're going to lift the dead period and allow recruits to visit campuses this fall or after the football season.
Well, let's look at this class overall, ranked number one on the Rivals.com recruiting rankings. It's a very talented class. Obviously, they're ranked number one. As we look to the remaining needs of this class, sorted by positions, you can kind of see the positions by offense and defense. What are the remaining needs in this particular class, in your opinion, Bone?
Well, last week I think I said tight end was very important as a remaining need, and even though Alabama already has 3 wide receiver commitments, I still think adding a fourth would be very beneficial if they get somebody like Brian Thomas on board. That would be absolutely huge for Alabama. But most of the focus is on the defensive side of the ball, especially on the defensive line. Now, Alabama, does have some outstanding defensive line commitments so far. They have 4 D line commitments. 3 interior guys and 1 defensive end with Anquan Barnes, Damon Payne, Tim Keenan, and Monkel Goodwine. So really the focus right now is defensive end. Who can they get? And there's still several guys who are out there that they're heavily recruiting. As I feel like we mentioned the same guys every single week with Shamar Turner, Chambry Jackson, JT Tulamola, Corey Foreman, Tyreek Sapp, to Mesa Adeniyi. I mean, all those guys are still out there, still very interested in Alabama. So I think if Alabama could potentially land 2 of those guys, they're going to be in great shape on the defensive front for years to come. Defensive back, still very important. They do have 4 defensive back commitments, but they can get 1 more elite cornerback. That's really what they're kind of aiming for right now. And, obviously, JaQuincy McKinstry, number 1 player in the state of Alabama, is still out there. But in my opinion, as of right now, I think he ends up at Auburn, maybe LSU, but my pick is Auburn for him at this time. I think the main focus, if they don't get JaQuincy McKinstry in this class, you got to get Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold has been an important target for Alabama for a very long time. It seems like there's a top 3 with Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. I know he put out a top 11, a couple weeks ago, but I think it really comes down to those three programs. And I think he recently said in an interview that those are the three schools that he's probably the most interested in, right now. So it's going to come down to the wire for him, because obviously Florida being an in-state school, he did take a visit up to Athens. I think it was 2 weekends ago, and then he's been to Alabama a few times. So I know Alabama coaches are really anxious to get him back on campus. So those are the kind of key positions of need, and some of the key targets at those positions that they're still going after right now.
All right. As you know, Bombs always dropping bombs. So thank you so much, Bombs, for
Thanks,
the
Bombs.
super chat. And as you know, during our recruiting chat, all super chats go to Andrew Bones. So thank you so much, Bombs. Always a key contributor along with Randall Williams. So thank you very much, guys. What's going on, Bombs? We see you. All right, Cameron, back with the great questions. Does Alabama land Xavier Sorey?
Well, they got a chance. I don't want to say yes or no right now, just because I think it's a very tight recruiting battle. We did an interview last week with JC Latham, and he's now teammates with Xavier Sorey, and he's been talking to him and been talking him up and been talking to Alabama up to him and trying to get him on board. But at the same time, he said he's tough to read. He's a guy that really likes 2 or 3 programs extremely very high, excuse me. And there's some other schools that are in it, but I think when we come down to where is he going to go, I think it comes down to Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Kind of the same with Terry Arnold. And guess what? Those two guys are friends. They've been talking about playing together. So one of these schools could end up with getting both of these guys. Very talented athlete. I think the biggest question mark with Sorey still is which position does he play in college? He can play on either side of the ball. He's going to be a defensive guy in college. Is he does he potentially grow into a defensive end? Is he an outside linebacker? Is he an inside linebacker? I think that's a huge question mark for a lot of schools. Now everybody wants him. He's got a spot until National Signing Day from all of these schools. But I think everybody would have really liked to seen him at camp this summer and kind of figured out, all right, he's definitely a inside linebacker, or he's definitely an outside linebacker, or he's a jack linebacker at Alabama. So I think those are some question marks that are going to be answered once he gets to a college campus next year. But I know Alabama really wants him. They've heavily recruited him for a long time. Sal Sinceri has been his lead recruiter throughout most of his recruitment, but with the move to IMG Academy this spring, Charles Huff, now the lead recruiter. Now Sal Sinceri is still recruiting him, so he's got some good guys, heavily pursuing him. But I do think that Alabama, Georgia, Florida are neck and neck for him, and all three want him as part of their recruiting class.
All right, we got a let me see, Jacob with the question: with 21 commitments already, how many more do you see Alabama landing, and who's in need? I mean, you've been talking about this a little bit, and everybody kind of wants to know the numbers, but do you think there's 4 more in this class? I think there could be 5 more. Maybe that's hard to say right now.
Yeah, I think probably the max right now is going to be 5. You never know what may happen in terms of some of the guys who are committed. You never know if somebody decides to look elsewhere. Now I think most of them are pretty solid, but there are some that are still heavily recruited by other programs. You just don't know what may happen 3 or 4 months down the road. Now Alabama's not just recruiting 5 players. They're recruiting 13, 14 guys, very heavily, guys that they really want in this class. And they're trying to fit 5 more guys in. And we've talked about the key positions of need on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Like I said, I still think they're going to try to get 1 more wide receiver. They're going to try to get a couple defensive linemen. They're going to try to get maybe a linebacker. I don't think they necessarily need another linebacker, but if they can get somebody like Xavier Sorey, you got to take him. I mean, and he's a definite take. And then obviously defensive back wise, still want to get at least 1 more corner. And if they can get 2 more guys, 2 guys that they really want, then they would probably take 2. Now, I don't think they're looking at the recruiting board and saying, hey, we got to get 6. Once we get, if some other guys go elsewhere, we got to look and see who's still out there. I think 5 is definitely a number they want. But if they can get, like I said, the guys that they heavily covet, heavily been recruiting, they would probably take 6.
All right. We got Hunter in with the super chat. We appreciate it, Hunter. Thank you so much. If Thomas is a top wide receiver target, if Alabama does take a wide receiver in 2021, does Henderson become a top target for 2022? I assume he's talking about Emmanuel Henderson. And when we get KoolAid, I know you talked about KoolAid before, but, kind of hook Hunter up in in his question right there.
Yeah, thank you, Hunter. Appreciate the tip. That really means a lot to me. With Brian Thomas being the top wide receiver target, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still some other guys out there that they, are keeping tabs on. They're still interested in, but Brian Thomas, make no mistake about it, he's still the the number one guy that they're going after. Destin Payson, another guy out of Louisiana that could potentially be a fallback option for him. Somebody that they've really liked a lot, but with 3 wide receivers committed and only having room for potentially one more. Brian Thomas has got to be the guy that you wait on and see what happens. If they don't take another wide receiver, I think with a guy like Emmanuel Henderson. I mean, Emmanuel Henderson, running back, athlete, whatever you want to call it. Oh, you meant running back, okay? Yeah, I mean, I don't think Alabama does take a running back in this class. Emmanuel Henderson certainly a guy that they like a lot, but there's some other guys throughout the country. Jaden Blue out of Texas, a guy that they are heavily interested in. Trevor Etienne out of Louisiana, another guy that is very high on their early recruiting board. I know his brother played at Clemson, but it's definitely somebody that Alabama has very high interest in right now, and heavily recruiting. So those are some of the top guys at the running back position that they really like a lot.
All right, Bone. All right, John Connor. What's up, John? I seen Terminator 2. I think we all have, right? Judgment Day. All right, with Georgia and LSU having big unofficial recruiting weekends, is Alabama falling behind with some top recruits?
Well, that's a great question. Especially with LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, all having these big get-togethers on campus and recruits interacting. I mean, this is the first interaction these recruits have had, at least on a campus, since the early part of the spring. So, it's something that's fresh on their mind. You want to get them on campus in some capacity. Obviously the coaches want to, be able to spend time with them. They hate for a bunch of kids to come to campus, maybe just one time and not even have a chance to spend any time with them. So I think there's kind of a wait and see approach. See if the NCAA is going to lift this ban and let recruits visit college campuses again this fall. And that's really when Alabama wants to be able to spend time with them. So when they come back on campus. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, obviously, if the NCAA continues to extend this recruiting dead period, I think right now it's till September the 30th. We'll probably hear something before then if it's going to be lifted or if it's or if they're going to extend it more. If they extend it more, I think Alabama's going to have to do something. They're going to have to talk to some of their commitments and try to get them to put together some sort of plan for a bunch of recruits to come on campus. But yeah, I mean, they could easily fall behind on some kids if they're not allowed to, or if they don't bring any kids on campus at all, and these other schools are able to get these kids on campus like we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Because obviously Georgia had several of Alabama's top targets on campus it was either last week or the weekend before with Xavier Sorey, Terran Arnold, Corey Foreman, Marcus Mims, Mason Smith, and LSU. Similar thing this past weekend, having Corey Foreman, Mason Smith, all on campus. Oklahoma's had some big targets on campus, so they're going to have to figure out something and try to get their top targets to Mesa Adeniyi and Shamar Turner and Mason Smith and Terran Arnold. Brian Thomas, they're going to have to get those guys all on campus at some point before these guys make decisions.
All right, we got Eric D coming in. He's asking, is Alabama still heavily pursuing Marcus Mims?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The 5-star offensive tackle from Georgia, still heavily pursued by Alabama. Now, I think we're all kind of in agreement that Alabama's probably a little bit behind. He's visited Tennessee, he's visited Georgia multiple times over the last month, just visiting the campus. He can't even meet with the coaching staff, but he's visited both campuses multiple times in the last month and a half, and hasn't visited Alabama. So I think Alabama's probably behind those schools right now. It's possible they can get him on campus again before he announces a decision. You never know what may happen. I know he's still in communication with Alabama almost daily, talks to Kyle Flood, the Alabama offensive line coach, very often. But in my opinion, as of right now, it's a Georgia-Tennessee battle until Mims at least makes a return trip to Tuscaloosa.
All right, we got Hunter back with another super chat. Thank you so much, Hunter. Another question. He's saying, by the way, I live in the same town as Henderson. He said that it's Bama, Auburn race, but it looks like South Carolina as well.
we got to pay you, Hunter. You didn't have to pay us for the info, but thank you. You know, I do think it will come down to Alabama and Auburn for him. I think South Carolina, I think they were actually maybe his first SEC offer. So I think that's why, he's very high on the Gamecocks. But yeah, I mean, this is a kid that, is very high on Alabama and Auburn's recruiting boards. And, definitely somebody that we're paying very close attention to moving forward.
All right. I think we have a couple questions coming in regarding JT Tulamola, and everyone's asking. There was another question on here. I'll post it somewhere, but it said if JT was to wait till February, would Alabama still have room for him? What's kind of the latest on JT, if there's any movement, and kind of what's the long-term forecast with him?
Yeah, for those that don't know, JT Tulamola from just outside of Seattle, Washington, and number 4 player in the Rivals 100. Some people argue he's the number 1 overall player in the country. I mean, he's just an elite athlete. 6'4", 275 pounds. Also a standout basketball player. Alabama would certainly hold a spot for him until February, and I don't think he's planning on making a decision anytime soon. I think he's planning on waiting it out. I think he plans on, as of right now, from what I've been told, state of Washington is going to have a season, but it's going to be in the spring, and JT Tulamola plans on playing for his high school this spring. So that's something to really keep an eye on in terms of him potentially waiting until February to announce a decision. Now, from what I've gathered, I think Alabama is currently behind Ohio State, but I don't think anybody else is in front of Alabama at this time. I think it's a two-team battle between Alabama and the Buckeyes. I think there's some other schools that are heavily, involved, that he's heavily interested in, and could potentially go anywhere else. Oklahoma's high on his list. Oregon's high on his list. I know he likes Michigan a little bit as well, but I think this comes down to Alabama and Ohio State, and Alabama is really starting to surge with him over the course of the last few months. Now, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would still probably say Ohio State. But like I said, Alabama's really made up a lot of ground in the last few months. How much ground can they make up in the next month, in the next 2 months? I think they've got a chance to potentially pull this off. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, he's a key target for Ohio State after losing to Mesa Adeniyi last month. So he remains a big time target. But yeah, Alabama loves this kid. They're recruiting him mainly as a defensive end, but probably also telling him, hey, listen, you come to Alabama, you can play any position you want. You can play, you be a power forward on the basketball team if you want to, or I guess he's 6'4", maybe small forward. But I do think that Alabama would hold a spot for him until signing day. They like him that much.
All right, we're back at it again with Cameron. Latest on Mesa Adeniyi, who you were just talking about.
Yeah, with Mesa Adeniyi, this is a guy that last summer I'd have bet all the money in the world on Alabama getting his commitment. I mean, just from talking to him after his visit to Tuscaloosa, and I actually think my prediction, is still there from last summer. It's still set on Alabama, so I hadn't changed it yet. So luckily, he decommitted from Ohio State. So I got a fighting chance to improve my prediction percentage. But yeah, I think Alabama's got a really good shot with him. He's pretty quiet. Doesn't do a lot of interviews. Keeps to himself, but he's certainly somebody that Alabama wants and has had a relationship for a very long time. I know many people, when he decommitted from Ohio State, a lot of people thought it was because of Florida, that he was very interested in Florida. Now, he's got a good relationship with the Florida coaches and likes Florida a lot, but Alabama also had I think they had a major role in that as well, and they've been heavily recruiting him ever since. His good friend, former teammate Jalen Milrose, committed to Alabama, leader of the class, quarterback, is going to be recruiting him every single day to Alabama. I think Alabama's got a great chance to land him. Now, will he commit soon? Will he commit on signing day? He tweeted a few weeks ago he was probably going to wait until signing day to make a decision, but then said, starting to really think about, his decision moving forward. So would not surprise me if, he committed sometime soon, but you never know. He may wait until signing day, but I definitely think that Alabama is at least in his top 2, maybe even number 1. I don't know, but I think Alabama's got a great chance to land his commitment.
Hey, you don't have to wait every Tuesday to get the recruiting scoop from Andrew Bone. You can go to BamaInsider.com and definitely sign up for a free 30-day trial and get all the information from Andrew Bone every single day. And of course, we got tons of team news and team nuggets that you can't get anywhere else back at BamaInsider.com. And you go to sign up, the promo code is simply Roll Tide at checkout. You can email me at Kyle@BamaInsider.com. I think when we look at this class overall, I mean, the windows are obviously closing, and we have more recruiting information on class of 2022 guys, which is obviously interesting as we continue to turn that page. But there's still some key targets left on board, and Cameron's asking, who is a top priority target that's left on board? Maybe name a couple. I mean, you've talked about several of them now, but maybe we're forgetting a couple guys that we haven't quite asked you yet.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been saying, I mean, you look at the offensive side of the ball, and clearly Brian Thomas, at the wide receiver position. Marcus Mims would be a great addition to the class. But Alabama does have 4 offensive line commitments, and 2 of the best tackles in the country in J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer. So does that mean he is a top priority? I mean, he's definitely wanted by Alabama, but we're talking who is a big need. And I think you got to look at the defensive end position. With only one defensive end currently committed in Monkel Gowine, you got to get a couple more defensive ends on board. And I think that's been a big priority for Alabama from day one. And that's why we see so many defensive ends that are out there that still have Alabama in their top 4, top 5. And Alabama's got a chance to land just about any one of them. Defensive back wise, as I mentioned earlier, cornerback, adding another elite corner is very important in this class. Can they get Terrion Arnold? Potentially pull off KoolAid. Jordan Gilbert's still out there. Sage Ryan, a guy that Alabama coaches have compared to Xavier McKinney. He's an LSU. He's a Louisiana guy, but a lot of connections to LSU. So many people think he's probably going to end up at LSU. So the DBs that I feel like most likely, I wouldn't say most likely, but Alabama's got the best chance with probably right now are Terrion Arnold and Jordan Gilbert, with KoolAid looking like probably going to end up going elsewhere.
All right, how about this guy, Bone? Mason Smith.
Well, yeah, Mason Smith, 5-star defensive lineman out of Louisiana, and what we've seen out of him the last couple of weeks is he's visited Georgia, visited LSU, and he grew up an Alabama fan, but as of right now, I do think it's probably more of an LSU Georgia recruiting battle. Can Alabama get him back on campus? He's got a great relationship with defensive line coach Freddie Roach. Pete Golding's been recruiting him for the last couple of years, so he's got a great relationship with him. But Alabama does have 3 interior defensive line commitments. Took Tim Keenan, last week, added a commitment from Damon Payne here recently, and also Anquin Barnes a few months back. So Mason Smith is definitely a guy that they really want. He would be a take all day long. And, in my opinion, they're probably going to be finished at the defensive tackle position if they don't get Mason Smith. And, we'll see what happens with him in the upcoming months. But as of right now, I do think it's an LSU Georgia recruiting battle.
All right. Alex is asking me a personal question. Did I get a fade today? Yes. And if you're in Tuscaloosa, go visit my boys, Greasy Hands. They do a great job. Fades and beards. So if you're out there, hook them up. Greasy Hands. Tell them Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com sent you. Let's see. All right, we got a team question. And remember, we'll talk team on Wednesday night. We do our recruiting show on Tuesdays. I will take your calls tomorrow night, and we will talk more team. A lot to cover as Alabama enters this next weekend. Big scrimmage this Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I think it's going to be time where these guys really start to find that continuity, if they have any, on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Let's face it, they have to, because it's game month, right? Missouri lurking at the end of this month. Who do you think will be a defensive leader when you look to the freshmen of the future? I mean, William Anderson, I think, is a guy who we continue to hear great things about. Certainly Brian Branch doing a great job, along with Drew Sanders. So those are some guys. But Wednesday night, we will talk team right here on BamaInsider.com. Let's see. We got some other questions coming in. I think there was a question, Bone, and they were asking about a JaQuincy McKinstry tweet. And you talked about that several days ago. Again, you don't have to wait till Tuesday, but tweeted out some information that, had Bama in there, and tweeted at a Bama coach. I mean, is there anything to read into that, or is that just, kids being kids out there?
Yeah, I think with with KoolAid, the graphic that he sent out, it wasn't just a graphic that he got. I mean, I think Alabama sent this same graphics out to all of their targets. We saw several other Alabama commitments basically tweet the exact same thing. So I wouldn't look too much into that. And you're going to see kids wear different teams' gear. You're going to see kids wear backpacks to school with logos on it and not go to that school. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a troll, but it's definitely something I wouldn't buy too much into at this time. I mean, we try to talk with all of our sources. We talk to different people on every single side and kind of get their feel on things. And we talk to the kids, and basically, we go by off of all of that combined when we start making our predictions, looking at stuff that people post on Twitter, or gloves that somebody wears on a Friday night or something like that. And I know that it gets a lot of people going, but I just wouldn't buy too much into it. And as of right now, I still think KoolAid ends up going to Auburn.
How about this, Bone? I mean, if the Big Ten doesn't play football, I mean, there's no official word. I mean, there's been talks that they might go to October 1st, which could make sense. But if they don't play football, do you think that'll hurt them from a recruiting perspective? I mean, I think I've asked you this before, and you said no. I mean, they're recruiting at such a high level. They're a program of tradition. I mean, they win football games. Do you think if they don't play, that could be an advantage for Alabama to land some of these guys that Alabama and Ohio State are going head to head for?
Well, I don't want to say completely no, because we just don't know. We don't know if it's going to affect recruiting yet, because we just haven't seen anything happen at this point. Our recruits going to be able to come on campus or to a game this fall. I mean, obviously, I know Alabama fans found out about their tickets today, and a lot of guys, a lot of fans are going to be kind of the ones who did receive tickets are kind of spread out throughout the stadium. Our recruits going to be able to come in, right? With Alabama, not having many targets left, do they decide, all right, well, we can at least bring our top 5, our top 10 remaining targets on campus for this game? Obviously that would be huge if they can get get kids on campus for let's say the Georgia game. If they're able to do that, that's going to be a huge advantage for Alabama this fall. But with Ohio State, as we've seen, currently battling Alabama for the #1 recruiting class. It seems like it flip flops just about every single day, between the two schools, and they're already loading up in the 2022 recruiting class for next year. So things haven't really slowed down much for Ohio State. They're still going to get theirs, but Alabama, could really benefit from having a season, and especially if it can potentially get kids on campus this fall. But also, kids are going to be watching Alabama play this fall. They're going to be, even if they're at home, they're going to be sitting at home watching the Tide play and seeing how they're doing. And they're not going to be watching the Big Ten or the Pac-12 teams play.
All right, how about this one? In Johnny Jama, no, Dantona is asking me about Kadarius Callaway. I mean, there was kind of some small smoke that said that he could be flipping back. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, is there any truth to that? I mean, are we looking into that? What's kind of the latest on Kadarius Callaway?
People who follow recruiting, and have followed it for a long time know recruiting in Mississippi is always kind of tricky. You just never know what's going to happen. It seems to be a very difficult state for any team to recruit. And Alabama's has had some success, recruiting some guys, from time to time. LSU's been able to go up there, and we saw Georgia go in there a couple times as well, and get some big targets. But for the most part, a lot of these kids like to stay home. They, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, they're able to keep a lot of these in-state kids home. Now, with Kadarius Callaway, flipped his commitment from Mississippi State to Alabama back in July. I think, I think he's pretty, set on Alabama still. But has Mississippi State slowed down in pursuing him? Absolutely not. I mean, he's, arguably the best player in Mississippi. Mississippi State wants to make a big impact. They want to get a big time kid from the in-state on their recruiting board. And even though they lost him, they're continuing to press forward. It's not like they're just giving up on him once he committed to Alabama. They're still going to recruit him, and he may still take a visit over there. But as of right now, Alabama, remains in the driver's seat to keep him on board.
All right, we got another one. What's up, Marcus? We see you. Thank you so much for all the support, Marcus. We always see you posting on our YouTube videos, so thank you very much for the support. We appreciate it. Um, what's up with Shamar Turner, Bone?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Marcus. I think with Shamar Turner, kind of the same with a lot of these other guys. Still wants to wait a while, and I know we it feels like a broken record with me this evening with a lot of these guys because we keep saying, well, they're going to wait. Well, unfortunately, that's just the case with a lot of these guys. They're wanting to wait it out. They want to see if they can take some visits this fall. Now, Shamar Turner did take a visit over to Texas a couple weekends ago. Alabama would love to get him on, back on campus again. He visited back in the spring for Junior Day. I still think Alabama's in the driver's seat for him, but we're still a few months away from him making a decision. And which campuses is he going to visit? Which college coaches is he going to be able to interact with, if at all? So we're all kind of just waiting to see what happens with him at this time. I do think Alabama, Texas, Texas A&M, all pretty high on his list. Now he does want to get over to Georgia, wants to get over to LSU, a couple schools that he has yet to visit. So we'll see if those visits happen, if the NCAA allows those trips to happen or not. But Alabama still remains, I think in great. I don't know if I would say great. I did predict Alabama. I want to say they remain in good position, but they've got to keep it that way. They got to keep it that way for the next few months until he gets ready to announce that decision.
All right, got another question coming in from Tanner. What's up, Tanner? Thank you very much for the question. Is it safe to say that when things finish, Alabama will be top 3 at worst when everything is said and done after signing day?
Yeah, I believe so. I've been saying that for a while. I've always felt like Alabama was going to have a top 5 recruiting class once its key targets started making decisions, once the rankings kind of got updated. And obviously, Alabama's already made the move all the way to number 1 now. It's probably going to change. I mean, if Ohio State gets another commitment, they're going to move ahead. But I just don't see Alabama dropping too far off, in the top 3. Now, I do think Georgia's going to make a big run. In the next couple months, they've got a lot of guys that they feel like they're in the driver's seat for. So, in my opinion, I do think it's going to be a top 3 of Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State when all is said and done. And it's going to be a dogfight to the finish line. So we'll have to see. Where does Terrion Arnold potentially finish in the rankings? Because many people think he's potentially the best cornerback in the country. Does he move up to number 1 by signing day, and where does he end up going? What happens with JT Tulamola? Does he, a commitment from him, could really sway things in terms of the number 1 overall class between Alabama and Ohio State. So it's going to be a lot of fun, following this, especially, following the rankings to see, who ends up making a big bump, because a lot of these kids are playing this fall. A lot of these kids are getting seen, a lot of them for the first time. So it's going to be interesting to see what these recruiting analysts see. Somebody like Devontae Smith or Kadarius Callaway. These guys are 3 stars on Rivals right now. I think they're clearly Rivals 250 type players, and they're going to get seen in the next couple of weeks. So I'm very interested to see what the Rivals guys have to say about them, because they can make a big bump and could potentially solidify Alabama as the top recruiting class in the country.
All right, how about this from Troop? What's up? Let me know if Rivals ever needs a graphic design work. We're willing to work for free. Yo, man, I'm a businessman. Hit me up, Kyle@BamaInsider.com, okay? Email me and want to see some graphics of Bone Pick 2 class of 2021 guys that we need graphics of.
Terrion Arnold and JT Tulamola.
Okay, there you go. There's your homework. All right, so Bone, when we look at this class overall, the class of 2021, so talented in every way. Talk about, maybe an assistant coach, like Charles Huff, just set it up there for you, and the job that he's done this year, and some of these other coaches, because I think this year more than ever, Alabama's had to rely on that Bama factor to get some of these guys to commit in a year where certainly the Bama factor really stands out. So can you talk about the job that some of these assistants have done in such a very difficult recruiting climate?
Well, yeah, it's obviously the most difficult year they've ever experienced on the recruiting trail. With all the I guess things that have held them back. Not being able to see the kids in person and interact with them. Definitely a tough assignment for them. But with Alabama, they've been able to kind of overcome that. And everybody's going to say, well, it's Alabama. Of course they are. Well, there's a lot of other programs out there that are recruiting at a very high level and doing a great job on the recruiting front. And, few months ago, everybody thought that it might be time for Nick Saban to hang it up because he wasn't able to get top kids anymore. But obviously, that's completely changed. But with Charles Huff, Jeff Banks, Carl Scott, there's just so many guys on the Alabama staff that do a tremendous job. I think you got to also give Kyle Flood a lot of love in this recruiting class because. He's in charge of recruiting all the offensive linemen. Not just in charge of recruiting his territory, but in charge of recruiting each offensive lineman. And has put together probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive line class. During the Saban era. I mean, it's an outstanding group of guys, and I think Alabama fans should be very excited about the way this class has been put together. Freddie Roach, another guy that first year, first few months on the job, and he can't even visit any recruits or go out on the road or do any of that. And he's been able to land some big time defensive linemen in this class so far. So Charles Kelly, another guy who's done a great job, and obviously Sal Sinceri, one of the best in the country. So a lot of great coaches on this staff right now.
All right, Bone, we got another question coming in. I think it is on Christian Zachery, prospect we've talked about several times. I mean, you kind of alerted everybody about him, and now people keep asking about him. So any movement and over these next couple months, what should we kind of watch out for?
Yeah, with Christian Zachery, I don't think it's necessarily something that has to do with Sorey because their bodies are a little bit different. They can play different positions. I think with Alabama, just trying to figure out what exactly Christian Zachery will play, at the next level. Is he potentially a defensive end? I know he's listed at 6'3", 238 pounds right now. I think he's, might be a little bit closer to 250 pounds now. So can he potentially grow into a defensive end? You got to think this guy during his sophomore year had 20 sacks. 20 sacks. A lot of people don't have that in an entire high school career. So he had 20 sacks as a sophomore, was injured for most of his junior season. So unfortunately, Alabama, a lot of other schools are wanting to see him a little bit more this spring, this summer, but all of that got wiped out. So you wait a little bit. He wants to wait a little bit longer. I think he's planning on announcing sometime in October. But Alabama could potentially give him the green light to commit. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't think it's necessarily what happens with Sorey because I think they're a little bit different in terms of what they're going to play in college.
All right. Another question coming in. Thank you so much for all the questions. We really appreciate it. Andrew does such a great job for us here at BamaInsider.com on the recruiting front. Of course, we have team coverage. Our staff does a great job on that team front. So definitely go to BamaInsider.com. You don't have to wait every Tuesday or Wednesday to talk team with us. You can go to BamaInsider.com. And I know there's many ways you guys contribute right here with the super chats. We appreciate that. You can also hit the join button at the bottom of any of our videos to become a member of the Touchdown Club or the Loyalty Club. Or you can simply sign up at BamaInsider.com. The promo code is simply Roll Tide at checkout. What's up, Samuel? We see you. I love the avatar, man. That avatar. Did our graphic guy design that? Because that is fire. I love that avatar. Hope y'all doing okay. 22 defensive tackle Curtis Perry. Kind of what's the latest? And if we miss out on Brian Thomas, you said multiple times. Destin Payson. You kind of talked about the wide receivers a little bit, but for our friend here, Samuel, kind of hook him up.
Yeah, with Curtis Perry has an Alabama offer. Definitely somebody that is a top in-state target for the Crimson Tide at a Park Crossing High School, Montgomery. Alabama wants him. I think he's a take right now. It's kind of difficult with the 2022 recruiting class, all these juniors, because you really get a chance to evaluate juniors during the spring and during the summer and decide, all right, are we going to really push forward? Are we going to go out and evaluate them this fall? Are these guys that we're going to invite to our games on Saturdays and have them and their families come up and then invite them back for junior day and the following year? So obviously COVID just threw a wrench into everything. Not just the 2021 class, but 2022, 2023. So we've seen a lot of offers go out in 2022, but I think a lot of these offers in 2022 we still need to evaluate you. We still want to, size you up. We still need to get you on campus at some point. But with Curtis Perry, I think Alabama's probably already seen enough of him, and they really like him, and he's certainly a top priority target. And I think Alabama's certainly in his top group of schools right now. I don't want to make a prediction just yet on him, but I do think Alabama has a great chance with him. wide receiver wise, as you mentioned, Brian Thomas certainly a big time target for Alabama and somebody that they really like with Destin Payson. And we heard back in the spring, early part of the summer, that he was really close to making a commitment to Florida State. But Alabama started really coming after him hard, and he decided to hold off from making a decision. And he still has held off from making a decision. So if Alabama does miss out on Thomas, I think Payson could potentially be a guy that they end up getting. So we'll keep an eye on him, even if he commits to Florida State. It could be one of those guys that they really push for and potentially flip if he does commit to Florida State. But I think all the eyes right now seem to be on Brian Thomas until he decides what he's going to do.
All right. And Eric D, you guys do a great job sharing the latest information. Thank you, Eric D. We appreciate you being here. Kind of from my perspective, all of us are always grinding. Today was super busy. You had Nick Saban's press conference. You had Alabama had their 14th practice. Then our recruiting show. And I think one thing that I hope you guys, realize, and I'm sure you guys do, being subscribers. I mean, all this content, it takes work to develop and craft up. And maybe that's why you're subscribed right here on BamaInsider.com. I know you guys have, plenty of options when it comes to Alabama Crimson Tide football, but I hope that you understand that we're putting our best foot forward. We're in grind mode to give you the content that you certainly deserve, which is paired up with Alabama football. I mean, let's face it, this is the pinnacle college football program. So our game model is to be the best, not second place, is to be the best. So we want to bring it every single time that we step onto our platform and show you guys what it's like to be a part of BamaInsider.com. So you guys deserve the best coverage that is out there 100%. Eric D, I think you had another question up in here. One last question. Will Bama pursue or flip Jason Marshall from Florida? That we had a great shot at him until Florida grabbed him late in the momentum for his commitment.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think with Jason Marshall, as we kind of alluded to, prior to his commitment, we were hearing, very strongly that he was going to stay in state, that his mom wanted him to stay a little bit closer to home, and there was a lot of buzz around Miami, and I think if anybody is going to flip him, it could potentially be Miami down the road. But as of right now, I just don't see Alabama. Alabama may be reaching out to him and still communicating with him a little bit, but unless he makes a trip back up to Tuscaloosa, I don't see him flipping to Alabama. I think if he does, maybe to Miami. I think a lot of people are probably watching Miami this fall to see what they're able to do. Miami's has a great recruiting class so far. A lot of in-state guys, a lot of guys from the Miami area. So he might be watching Miami a little bit closer this fall than anyone else.
All right, Bonus, we kind of wind down and enter the slow rest of the evening. Can you talk about, I was wondering about this earlier, and we have a great feature on Bama Insider. It's Following the Future. Can you highlight some of the Alabama committed prospects from the class of 2021, some guys who are having some good season? I know there's a good majority that are not playing yet or might be starting to play, but as we saw, IMG kicked off their season recently, and there's several guys here in Alabama. Like I keep thinking about Deontay Lawson, who had 24 tackles in one particular game. I mean, it's mind-blowing to still think about. But can you talk about some other guys who are having strong seasons as high school football has just recently kicked off?
Yeah, I think whenever we're talking about any of the Alabama commitments who are off to a great senior season, I think Deontay Lawson's probably the first guy you got to talk about. I mean, he just had an unbelievable game against UMS Wright a few weeks ago, and certainly a guy that I feel like is probably one of the most underrated players in the entire country. I think he's at least a Rivals 100 type player. He's gotten a little bit bigger. He's 6'3". I think he's close to about 220 pounds now. Plays for a former Alabama assistant coach, Ronnie Cottrell. And Coach Cottrell's always been extremely high on him. And, this is a guy that, Alabama coaches have been extremely excited about. I know he's listed as an outside linebacker, but I think Alabama's looking at him more as an inside linebacker than anything else at this time. Ian Jackson, another in-state guy, is having a great start to his senior season. And if you haven't watched our interview with Ian Jackson, we had a great interview with Ian posted today. That's on YouTube, so you can check it out. Just one-on-one with Ian Jackson. He was a lot of fun to speak with, and he's off to a very good start during his junior season or senior season. To be sure to take a look at that. I think he told me that he's also up to about 220 pounds right now. This is a guy who kind of plays all over the field, plays inside, outside, has played a little bit of defensive back. Just this extremely talented kid. And obviously we know that IMG Academy. Played their first game the other night. Zachery Brooks had a couple catches, including a touchdown. JC Latham also looked outstanding in the game as well at left tackle. So we're going to start seeing a lot more Alabama commitments on Friday nights with season starting up here. For a lot of guys here in the next couple of weeks. So very very interested to see who's going to come out and really stand out over the next month or so.
All right. Good stuff, Bone. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us tonight. Great show as always. We appreciate you guys' questions. Check out those highlights that we posted at the beginning of this video on Roby Utz. They're fantastic. I mean, knocking people's helmets off, throwing up the grabs like Gronk. So big time get for the Alabama Crimson side. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson. You can find us both at BamaInsider.com every single day. You don't have to wait till Tuesday. The promo code to sign up is simply Roll Tide at checkout. Find us on YouTube, of course. Hit that subscribe button and, of course, hit the thumbs up. That really helps our channel grow and get to other Alabama Crimson Tide football fans out there. We're marching towards 50,000 subscribers right here on our YouTube channel, and it's all because of you guys. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope you guys had a great evening. Please be safe and have a great rest of your week. I'll catch you Wednesday night for my live show as we talk Alabama Crimson Tide football team coverage as Alabama marches towards their first game of the season against Missouri. It's college football month. Finally here, and happy to be here to talk about that with you. So thanks, Bone. Do you have fun tonight?
Oh yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It's always a lot of fun chatting with you guys. Thank you for all the super chats. That means the world to me. And if you haven't heard, I know we talk about it every single week, but my first book, the Road to Bama, is now available. It's available for pre-sale. You can go to Barnes&Noble, Books A Million, Triumph Books, and also Amazon. So be sure to pick that up. I think you'll really enjoy it. Jay Barker wrote the foreword for it, and was really excited about this coming out on September the 29th. And hey, if you have any interest in potentially purchasing a signed copy, hit me up. Look me up on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on BamaInsider.com, or even on this YouTube page, and we'll figure it out. We'll get you a copy, signed copy, and figure out how you can get one. So thank you guys so much, and can't wait to talk to you guys next week. But hey, guess what? I'm on BamaInsider.com every single day. So if you have any questions, if you want to communicate with me, if you want to read any of our stories, go to Bama Insider right now. Sign up for the 30-day free trial. Check us out, and we'll be sure to give you all the answers on there as well.
All right. Thank you so much, fam. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for joining us. Good night.